Lesson 3. And today we're going to focus on how to explain fraction equivalence. What is fraction equivalence using visual models or pictures to help us? So let's just jump right in. Spark your learning. Compare Jason's and Kim's turns. Whose turn is closer to being a full turn? Use the visual model of each turn to explain. All right, so now let's look at our two models that we have. Here's Jason's and here's Kim's. So what we're doing today is we're looking at the parts that are shaded in to see which shape has more shaded parts than the other. So it says whose turn is closer to being a full turn. Well, if it would be a full turn, then the entire shape would be shaded. Well, we can see that in Jason's visual model, we have 1, 2, 3 parts that are shaded. In Kim's, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts that are shaded. But I want you to pay close attention to the part that's not shaded. Look at both of the models. Look at the part that's not shaded. Do you notice anything about the part not shaded? It's the same size. It's the same shape. The only thing that makes it different is you have one equal part here and you have 2 equal parts that make up that space. So to answer our question, whose turn is closer to being a full turn, we could say that neither of them. Now they want us to be able to explain how we know. Well, we know neither one of them because they are equal or the same. They are equal. The circles that represent both turns are the same size, and the amount of shading in both circles is the same. So they represent the same part of a full turn. Okay, so that's our reason why. So that's what we're working with today in this lesson. So let's move on to page 276 and let's continue to practice the strategy. Okay, let's look at build understanding. Sam wants to paint a skateboard ramp with a cool design. He has just enough paint to cover half of the ramp. Show different designs that Sam can use. Divide the last 2 rectangles into a different number of equal parts. Shade each of the last 3 rectangles to show 1/2. All right, so now they've showed us with our first model, they showed us what 1/2 looks like. So what they want us to do is to come up with 3 other ways to show equal parts of 1/2. So let's look at our first one. They've already divided it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 equal parts. Well, what would be half of 6 equal parts? Well, that would be half of 6 would be 3. So we're going to shade in 3 of those parts. Okay? Now, we need to show in the second 2 squares or rectangles, we need to show equal parts. So we can divide, let's divide this one into 4 equal parts. Okay, if we have 4 equal parts and we want to shade in half, we're going to shade in 2 equal parts. Okay, well, let's do 8 for this one. So that would be 4. So now we have 8 equal parts. Well, half of 8 is going to be 4 equal parts. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now let's complete the table to record your findings. So in the first model, we're showing 1/2. We have 1 part shaded, 2 equal parts. In the second model, we're showing 3, 6, So 3 parts are shaded, 6 equal parts. In the next model, we're showing 2/4. So we have 4 equal parts and 2 are shaded. And the last one, we're showing 4/8. So we have 8 equal parts and 4 are shaded. Now let's look at the first fraction that we wrote in the table. So the first fraction that we wrote, the one we wrote, there you go, is 3/6. So how does the size of the parts compare to those in 1/2? So what we're doing here is we're comparing 3/6 to 1/2. Well, if we think about it, 3/6 has smaller parts. So right here is what we're looking at. 3/6 has smaller parts. So each part in 1/2 is the same size as 3 parts in 3/6. So let's write that on the line. Well, we know that the size of the parts in 3/6 are smaller. So we can say 3/6 has smaller parts. Each part, so now we want to compare them to 1/2. Each part in 1/2 is the same size as 3 parts in 3/6. So what we're saying here is that 1 part in 1/2 is the same size, is shaded in the same size as 3 of those in 3/6. Now let's look at B. How does the number of parts and the number of shaded parts compare to those in 1/2? So we're still looking at 3/6 here. So how does the number of parts and the number of shaded parts compare to those in 1/2? So we're going to say that 3/6 has 3 times as many parts in the whole shape and 3 times as many parts shaded. Okay? So let's keep going. Let's look at equivalent fractions. So let's move over to page 277. And let's see how we're going to take this strategy and look at equivalent fractions. Okay, it says write an equivalent fraction for 1/2. Compare the rectangle with 2 parts that shows in 1/2 in task 1 to the rectangle with 6 parts that you needed to show 1/2. Complete the equation. So it says 2 or more fractions. So let's look at our vocabulary. 2 or more fractions that name the same amount are called equivalent fractions. So what we're trying to figure out here, and I'm going to draw our squares again. You can't see them on my screen. So this showed 1/2. And then here we have, let's show the one with 6 equal parts. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We had 6 parts, and then we wanted to shade 3 of those to show half of the 6. Okay? So, compare the rectangle with 2 parts that shows 1/2 in task 1 to the rectangle with 6 parts you shaded to show 1/2. Complete the equation. So to do that, we need to figure out how many parts we had shaded in the rectangle with 6 equal parts. Well, we shaded 3 of those. So 1/2 equals 3/6. Now let's look at B. How can you use multiplication to describe the relationship between the numerators? And then how can you use multiplication to describe the relationship between the denominators? Now remember, our numerator is on top. This is our numerator. this is our denominator. Our denominator's on the bottom. So let's start with our numerators. We have a 1 and we have 3. So some ways that we can use multiplication to think about that is we can say there's 3 times as many as 1 in the numerator. Okay? And then how can we compare the two denominators? So here's our two denominators, 2 and 6. We can say the denominator of 6, so their denominator of 6 is 3 times as many as the denominator 2. So 6 is 3 times as many as 2. Now let's look at how to complete the equation to show how to write a fraction equivalent to 1/2. So to find a fraction that's equivalent to 1/2, so here's 1/2, we're going to multiply. So we're going to take the number 3, we're going to say 3 times 1 is 3, and we're going to use the same number in the denominator to multiply it by 2. So 3 times 2 is 6, and you get 3 6. And let's complete this statement about any fraction. To write an equivalent fraction, multiply the numerator and the denominator of the fraction by the same number. Make sure that you have D completed. Remember that statement. To write an equivalent fraction, you multiply the numerator and denominator of the fraction by the same number. All right, I want you to pause the video and try number 1, check understanding at the bottom by yourself. When you're finished, turn the video back on and check your answers. Okay, so let's look at check understanding. Jason makes a 5/6 turn on his skateboard. Samantha makes a 10/12 turn. Did they make the same size turn? Use the visual models to explain. So first let's fill in our visual models. So let's start with 5/6. We have 6 equal parts, okay, and we're going to shade in 5 of them. Four and 5. Now we're going to do the same thing with 10/12. We've got 12 equal parts and we're going to shade in 10 of them. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay? Did they make the same size turn? So let's look at our shaded parts. If we look at the shaded parts and the amount of space that they take up in our shape, they take up the exact amount of space. We also see that the parts that are not shaded take up the same amount of space. So that tells us that they made the exact same size turn. So our answer to the question would be yes. Use the visual models to explain. So now how can we explain that our answer is yes? Well, we know, so we can say, I know that 5/6, which is what we see up here, is equivalent to 10/12 because 10/12 has 2 times as many parts and 2 times as many shaded parts as 5/8. Or excuse me, 5/6. Fix that for you. Okay, so that would be our explanation. Okay, remember, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask about those in your Google Meets.